Welcome back to Creatures, Caverns, and Crafting. Today we're going to make ourselves a toxic cesspool for our Mutant Crawl Classics game. Of course, you can always use this for Gamma World or any other post-apocalyptic / sci-fi game that you might be running. And to start, we're just going to start carving out a piece of foam core like so. What we want to do is get rid of those right angles of the foam core. We want this to look nice and natural on the table. Again, always be safe when doing this. We also want to watch the surface we're cutting on. Here I'm using a self-healing mat, so it should be pretty good to do this project on. Once we're done, we're just going to pop that out. Now I am going to leave the paper on here. The paper is going to act as a protective barrier for my next steps, so be sure to leave that on. If something comes off, don't worry, we're going to seal it in with some Mod Podge or some glue as well. Here we have some edges that we're just going to smooth over. Again, we want to kind of make this look natural. Next, I'm going to take some pieces of corkboard and just start arranging them on the foam core like so. I just want to get the desired pattern that I'm going for. And of course, I'm just going to use a little Elmer's glue to glue those in place. I'm going to take some air dry modeling clay for the next step of the project. This stuff is really fun to work with, and it's going to make our project go by a little bit easier. We're going to take a chunk of this and just start to knead it together like so. Once it's become pliable in your hand, you can start kind of tearing this off into smaller pieces and just putting it over the corkboard like so. All we're doing here is just kind of smoothing things out. Don't worry about fingerprints or anything like that. We are going to go over this with Mod Podge and flocking. Before the clay dries, I'm going to add some extra details. Here I've got some corkboard that I've glued to the foam core. I'm also going to take some mosaic tiles and just press those into the clay. I've also got some 28mm barrels here. We're just going to press them in as well. Allow everything to dry for about 24 hours. To add a bit more realism, I'm going to use these tabletop scenic pieces that I purchased from TT Combat. If you don't have these, that's fine, but just keep in mind that if you have any bits left over from a model kit, you might throw those in there. Wheels, anything like that is always great for a good post-apocalyptic scenery piece like this. Now once the clay is dry, you might notice some things will pop out. That's okay. We're just going to remove those, add a little E6000, and just glue them right back into place. Here's a brick that I did just for an example. To provide some protection to the piece, I'm just going to start applying some Mod Podge. We want to make sure to pay attention to the clay itself. If you don't, you could get moisture reintroduced to the clay and cracking will occur. So we're just going to apply this all over the piece. One thing to note here, once it dries, if you do start to observe some warpage with the foam board, that's okay. What we can do is just simply apply a layer to the back side of it, and that should straighten things out for you. As done in previous videos, I'm going to apply a nice layer of Vallejo earth texture all along the piece. I'm going to allow this to dry. This acts as a really good primer, and it also adds another level of protection as well as giving the texture a look for sand or dirt. To lighten the piece up, I'm just going to go over it with a nice dusting of white primer. Allow that to dry, and then we're going to hit everything with a bark brown. Once we've done that, I'm going to apply a good coat of Agrax Earthshade Wash. We'll allow that to dry as well, and then we're just going to add some interesting colors like this purple and orange. Notice these colors are going to reflect the Mutant Crawl Classic handbook. There's a lot of purples, yellows, greens, and oranges, and that's the look I'm going for. For the next step of the project, I'm going to be using some 2-part epoxy. I'm also going to use some of this orange. Just going to add a couple of drops in here. And next we're just going to mix up the two compounds together. Get this nice and mixed in. I'm not wearing gloves in this, but if you're working with this, I highly recommend it. It's easy to get on you, and it can irritate your skin or eyes if it gets in it. Once we've got a good mixture of this, I'm going to go ahead and start to pour this into the crevice that we created. Let me swap things up so you guys can see a little bit better, and I'm just kind of pulling this out with the popsicle stick like so. This normally has about a 5-minute cure time, so you should have plenty of time to work with it. Looks like I'm going to be a little short, so I may have to mix up a little more. So if you're a crafter, sometimes things don't come out the way that you want to. In this case, I had a chemical reaction that wasn't the desired effect I was looking for. But that's okay. In the words of Bob Ross, there are no mistakes, only happy accidents. So we're going to let this dry. I'm going to apply a little bit of yellow paint there. And what I may do is come back here in a second once everything is kind of hardened and apply maybe a little bit more resin, see if I can cover it. While the resin's drying, I'm going to just apply some natural sienna pigments. If you've watched my videos before, you know I'm a big fan of using pigments. As you can see, it brings out a nice contrast to the piece. Here I'm also using some burnt sienna. Just apply that along and we'll move on to our next step. As stated earlier, I went ahead and added some more 2-part epoxy to the chemical reaction we had earlier. This worked very well and it actually seeped into some of the air pockets that were created. I also added some green paint just to give it a little bit more toxic effect. Overall, I was really happy the way that this came out.
Dusty, so dusty.
Well guys, that's a wrap for this week. I really appreciate your viewership. Seeing a lot more comments, a lot more subscribers. Let's keep that up. I am a small channel. I'm not expecting this to grow to enormous amounts, but I do like it when people join. There's a lot of tabletop crafters out there, a lot of fantasy crafters. I'm just trying to do something that's different, not steal anyone's thunder. There are videos on how to make toxic pools out there as well, some better than mine. This is just my own spin. I greatly appreciate everything you guys do. Like, subscribe, continue to follow, and we'll catch you on the flip side. Be safe, guys.